Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Certified Forgotten. It is the end of 2023. We have checked. We're still the only podcast that talks about movies with 10 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. We haven't spawned an imitator yet, which frankly makes me feel like we're not doing as well as we can. My name is Matt Monagle. I'm one half of your Matt hosts, and I am joined, as always, by my partner in the I've been playing with calling it the Certified Forgotten Entertainment Network, which sounds big boy fancy, so I'm going to go with that. My partner in the Certified Forgotten Entertainment Network, Matt Donato, who is home for the holidays. It's a fucking Lifetime movie in New Jersey, baby.
Yes, I am home for the holidays, and if there are any technical issues with this episode, please blame that on me. I love my parents very dearly, but their router is a potato, and I don't know how to deal with that.
And remind me, you're disparaging your parents' internet in the living room in front of your parents, correct? Because that's the only place where you can get a connection.
No, absolutely not. I am right now on the porch in about 30-degree weather, bundled up as best as I can, so I can have silence and a little bit of Wi-Fi that works here.
Great. Then I'll be sure to slow the pace of my conversation way, way down.
Thank you.
We're here. We're rounding out the year. We're feeling nostalgic, and we're turning back the clock pretty much goddamn all the way to the beginning of the Certified Forgotten podcast and bringing back a guest who was here in episode 5, which is wild to think of 3-4 years later. He doesn't need, we always say they need no introduction. I don't think this guest actually does need an introduction, but Tanada, will you please introduce him anyways?
That's so funny because my introduction was going to be, this is a man that needs no introduction, so I'm not going to give him one. It's Rob Hunter.
Can I get a better introduction, please?
You can do. You requested a do-over, Matthew. Go ahead.
Fine. Coming back to the Certified Forgotten podcast for the second time is a man who writes for Film School Rejects, one of my good friends in the industry, who we go to festivals all the time. He's my other favorite father in the industry, Mr. Rob Hunter.
There we go. That's a good, not Donato's father, but I understand what you meant. And I should also say, I don't feel like it's my job to introduce the guest, but a former co-podcast host as well for you, Donato, correct?
Oh, he's tried putting that well behind him, so he barely even discusses it with us. But yes, thank you. My name is Rob Hunter. I write for Film School Rejects, and I'm back again for the second time. I've been waiting on this invite a long, long time. I did pretty good that first time, but I guess it's a tough crowd. But I'm happy to be back.
It is wild to think that it's been almost 70 episodes. And I mean, that's just for us. Like it's wild for me to sit here and be like, it has been a long time, because it did not feel like that long. And all of a sudden we got 70 episodes in the can and you're back. Finally.
Yes. So Rob, you joined us previously in August of 2019, which it doesn't seem like, again, it's 70 episodes. It doesn't seem like that long time ago. There are these podcasts that are in episode 500th or whatever in year 2, because they pump out, 2-3 episodes a week. But I mean, that was a pandemic ago. That was a parenthood ago. That was like total seismic shift in the industry ago. I'm going to go back after we finish recording and listen to that episode. And I'm going to listen for that little sparkle of joy pre-pandemic that I heard in your voice, Rob. And then I'm going to compare that to you today and be like, oh, he lost something. He just never got back.
I would challenge you and say that you're not going to find that, because I have still got a spark of joy. Currently, though, it's my daughter, less so podcasts. But yeah, no, I'm still very excited to be here. Very excited to be talking about movies. Very excited that I survived the pandemic. So I have no complaints, and so I am still overflowing with the joy you speak of.
So if you we're getting premium cattail if you could see the video right now. As a return guest, we're not going to go through and kind of rehash Rob's history with the horror genre, the early films that were formative for him. If you want to listen to those, I really do recommend you go back and listen to episode 5. It is my favorite slasher of all time. It's called Prey 2. So it's a really great conversation, a really great film. And you'll get to hear kind of Rob's history with the industry as well. But for this episode, since we are at the end of the year, and Rob, since you are the king of lists, every year at Film School Rejects, you and your team do 30 days of lists, not 30 days of horror film, but like 30 days of lists. List building is kind of your superpower. I want to talk about end of the year top tens, best of, and how as a working film critic you're able to sort of start digging into the piles of screeners, to all of those links that the smaller studios send you. How do you start when you reach like October, November? How do you start making sense of what your end of the year lists and big picture stuff is going to look like?
Well, I will say that it helps that I do cover film festivals throughout the year, because a lot of these movies, Sundance especially, but have played film fests, and then get like their limited theatrical release by the end of the year, sometimes at best. So it helps that I've seen some things in advance. That's always going to be a plus, and everybody should be going to film festivals. But also, I mean, honestly, you've got to prioritize, and you're always going to have to, because no matter what anybody says, you're never going to see everything that's up for contention every year. Mm-hmm. Whether you're genre or whether you're covering all the movies, whatever it might be, you're just not going to see it all. So you've got to prioritize. And to do that, I mean, you're going to go off. I try and avoid what other people think about things. But sometimes you have to like take into account, like, okay, is everybody dogging one movie and loving one? Is nobody talking about movie A but like praising movie B? Right. Figuring out from that, I will go to people that I have come to trust. Sometimes I'll also go to Donato and see what he's liking and talking about. I find that helps. And then you just go on from there, and then you prioritize, and you've got to say, okay, I've got an afternoon or I've got an evening. So like this time of year, I will try and watch like one or two contenders, per day. And that's the best I can do. But I mean, you start it late in October, you got it through the month of November and through December, and you just, again, prioritize. There's no trick to it. It's just a matter of like, paying attention to what's being talked about. So what's actually going to be a contender, what's actually worthwhile. You go off, talents that you like, you focus on them. Mm-hmm. You just got to like look at the field and kind of narrow it down yourself.
Yeah, and it's becoming so much harder in a way, because like, not to complain, this is like first world critic problems and all that, but because of the rise to prominence of streaming, this is no longer just a theatrical kind of, hey, what came out in theaters we're voting on scenario anymore. And it would be, again, the rise of streaming and how much content is churning out. I do feel like what Rob said, like, to piggyback back off that, I feel exactly like I have to go to the people I trust, see what they're seeing, see what they're liking. But something I noticed this year, and something that some other people are pointing out, is that a lot of the critics groups are looking a little bit more similar. I'm not saying they're copying or anything that way, but like, just in the way that we're seeing a few more movies get the same blanket treatment versus I think what we used to get a little ways. And I think that's because there is so much, it's impossible to see everything by the deadline. And you just have to kind of go off of what the consensus is saying. But I think the back end of that, or the kind of reaction to that, is the consensus is becoming what's like kind of running things.
I do think too that I agree that you get a lot of the same feeling between lists. But you do always notice, at least I always notice, the different critics groups such as that. They'll always have like one or two kind of like, off the wall choices where you can tell that the process is that we got to pick something that's going to make us stand out, that's going to like, get the kind of the attention. So they have all the usual, offenders on there, but then boom, there's something kind of oddball. But I mean, if you, believe in it and support it, I mean, it's because ultimately these are all subjective lists regardless of what anybody else might think. So you pick and choose what you got to pick and choose, and then stand by it. So
when you're putting together lists, either whether you're writing for a site, you're part of a critical body, you're submitting a ballot in some kind of context. I'm curious if you think let's say you've seen enough stuff and you're feeling kind of confident about like, oh, I've got some things that I want to put out there. Most of these lists will say, put 3 titles, put 5 titles, right? And then when you get the pool built up, then they'll say, okay, now we're going to choose from among the top selections, et cetera, et cetera. I'm curious, Rob, how you approach that. If your goal in doing that is to pick the things that you think will win out, if it's to pick the things nobody else is going to pick, but you're like, I at least want to get them on the ballot. Because I know when I turned in the first of the 2 ballots I had to do like the Austin Chronicle list of like best performances. I put down Alyssa Sutherland for Evil Dead Rise and Lizzie Kaplan for Cobweb for best actress, which nobody cares.
I put down Russell Crowe for best actor in The Pope's Exorcist.
Oh yes, that's why you're a guest on the show. So yeah, but talk to me about that process of like figuring out using those kind of like nomination things that you have. Are you prioritizing? Like, will you pick stuff that you don't think is as objectively good just because you're like, I want to have like, I don't know if Cobweb is better than like, some of the prestige performances from the best movies, but I was like, I want to get I want Lizzie Kaplan to walk away with one vote from this body.
I think for me, what I'll do is, so like traditionally speaking, like you said, they're going to say, hey, give us your top three, give us your top five. I'm not actually giving them my top three or my top five. And that's usually because at least half of those are going to be on everybody's top three, top five. Like, like this year, like Oppenheimer is on everybody's like critical, lists. I'm not going to put it in my top three or top five that I submit to CCA because I know it's covered. That one's good. So I'm going to pick other movies. Ones I do believe in, ones I would love to see, nominated, ones I would love to see win, ones I definitely want to see represented. But I'm going to pick those in the hope that other people maybe thought similarly, and it's enough to kind of get it into the conversation. So if I was actually ranking myself, it wouldn't be my top three, but these are the ones that I want to, make sure are seen and heard. And then hopefully some of them come through. Now, obviously Russell Crowe is never going to, actually come through as a nominee for Best Actor. I do firmly believe in that. I would have loved him to be up there, but but I mean, it's you pick the ones that you believe in. At least I pick the ones that I believe in, as opposed to the ones that I think will win, because part of that is I ultimately don't care who wins. I mean, it'd be great for the talents, obviously, and I want them to succeed. I want them to get the moment in the sun, but I don't really care. So I'm going to vote for things that I want to win, the ones I believe should win. And if they do, great. If they don't get nominated, oh well, so be it. I'm going to kind of go off of that, and that's my priority with the lists. To your earlier question, though, also I would add that it's only ever complicated when you're looking at the broad movie coverage, and Matt can, I'm sure, concur on this with the CCA stuff or with other stuff. Whereas the genre list, for me at least, I find a lot easier because unlike the regular movies or the prestige movies, they're not all being held until the end of the year when you have to wait on screeners. Right. I've been able to see these things throughout the year. They're not being held for this special spot, so I'm able to see a lot more contenders in the genre categories. It's just these, the higher profile prestige stuff that you can end up in the crunch.
And you probably sorry, Denard, real quick, to your earlier point too, Rob, like a lot of the stuff that is up for best horror this year played at 2022 Fantastic Fest, 2022 Fantasia, maybe Toronto. So not only have you already seen them, you probably already saw them before the calendar year that they're going to be nominated in.
Festivals, I mean, they absolutely are massive help. I do differ with Donato, most people, on how I what I include on this. Like I will, for my genre lists, I will, if I see something at a festival, it's fair game. And my reasoning is that I want to get the word out. I want to, so I mean, a movie that played festival this year that hasn't gotten released yet, it's on my, best horror list. It'll get released next year, but again, this way it kind of gets the title out there, gets people talking about it, and that's what I'm after. And I'll mention it again in next year's list. But this is the year that it actually released and hit eyeballs. This is the year I'm going to cover it. Now, the big actual list of, these are the best films of the year. For that one, I do stick to like U.S. release dates because I don't know why, but yeah.
Yeah, that's always been the argument me and Rob have of like, because I do the opposite. Like if I see something at a festival, it gets pushed into next year for my best of list. If I see it in Festival 2023, it doesn't have distro until 2024. It'll be on my best of 2024 horror. But I guess the mentality in my mind is if you cannot actually see it, then I don't think it should be on the list, because I shouldn't tell you, hey, this movie effing rules, but you're gonna forget about it by the time it comes out for distribution. So like I'd rather, I don't know. That's
I understand, and I can respect this. I'm not gonna get give you shit for it. But one, you're getting the word out there as the movie has actually been hitting festivals, so that's important. Two, when the movie does get released, you talk about it again. You say, hey, this made my list last year. So I mean, it's still getting talked about. And three, there are movies that play festivals and never get a US release. So does that mean it's never going to, qualify for one of your lists and you're never going to talk about it? And that to me is a downside. So like Plan B, great German action film from fucking like 6 years ago, never got a US release, but I had it on my best action of the year list. I've talked about it ever since. I keep talking about it. Still has yet to get a American release.
Yeah, that was Norway for me. The one that Henderson actually released on
Yeah.
Terrorvision, one of his first Terrorvision exclusives. It was on my best of, I guess that was 2021, 2022 horror list, but I saw it at 2014 Fantastica. So like, yeah, you are correct on that, Rob. Like that is a unfortunate byproduct of that. And the other thing is I think some sites too, I unfortunately had some like back and forth with some sites about Project Wolf Hunting because it had an October release last year, but all the sites were like, oh, it just had a little release. It doesn't count. Do it next year. And I'm like, what do you mean? It came out this year. Like, this is the year it came out. I want to tell people that this movie rules and it'll be cool when it hits Screenbox, but I want to tell them about it. So like, it just feels like the lines are blurring so much. And again, that's even just for horror, where Rob is 100% correct. Like festivals are so good for catching up with horror films and keeping up on top of them. And I think I feel like critics have to become more specialists in a way. Like, if you're doing the awards prestige stuff, that's what you're focusing on throughout the year. I think most of us are paying a lot more attention to horror. So like, yeah, my horror list at the end of every year, I've seen 100+ new horror movies. Like it's a thorough list versus the catch up. So like, you just have to like, weirdly enough, it's becoming to the point where you have to pick a lane and make sure that's what you're really sticking to all year. Because like when it comes into year, like that's my lists. I'm doing best kills. I'm doing best this, best that, but it's all horror related. And it's like, that's my shit. And at the same time, then I start getting award screeners and I'm watching 5 movies a day just to find some kind of like balance there.
Well, there's so many of these sites that put out, especially when it comes to the genre stuff. And I'm not going to name individual sites that will put out these lists of best action or best, horror, whatever. And it's just, you can tell even at the slightest of glances that this is not their lane. This is not what they're used to. They're picking things that like they quickly Googled horror, in 2023 and, grabbed some movies. And they get whatever, that's fine. It's their site. Do what you want to do, whatever. But I mean, to your point about being specialist, I mean, that's kind of the joy of it, of why your lists are good, Matt, why mine are even better. I'm kidding. Because we do see a lot of the stuff, and so we're not seeing just the stuff that got wide release in theaters. We're seeing a lot of this individual little like goofball weird shit that played at festivals that maybe got dropped on VOD or showed up on Amazon Prime or Hulu or whatever. And that I think it's good for us, it's good for the movies, and it's good for the readers to find new stuff.
So along those lines, Rob, back when I was writing for Film School Rejects regularly, you guessed it on this, so you'll remember, had the podcast that I also did for the site for a while, which was that before and after premise, where we talk about a movie before both critics had seen it, talk about it afterwards. And the idea was that the expectations that we bring into a screening room at every level, the most casual moviegoer or, the lead critic for the New York Times, that plays a part in how we think about a movie and our feelings about it afterwards. So I have to ask then, because I know that this is something I juggle with around this time of year, the films that you need to see. And I'm going to totally tell on myself here and say that movie for me right now is Past Lives. The movies that you need to watch before the end of the year that are definitely like quality and contenders and front runners. And so you want to go see them. It's impossible to divorce 12 months, a year, 6 months, whatever, of conversation about it and be able to go in kind of with the cleanliness that you want and sort of that clean slate you want. Is that something that you feel like you have to navigate a little bit this time of year, is when you're catching up on stuff that everybody else has been talking about for 6 months?
I don't think so, because I long ago kind of like forced myself to not take, like, I don't, people talk about oftentimes they'll, after a bunch of build up, they'll go see a movie and they'll think, it's okay, it doesn't live up to the hype, is what they say. And it's like, well, that's something of your own creation, like, I mean, what you just said basically. So that's not the movie's, nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah, of course.
Movie, that's entirely you. So I don't, other than again talents that I know I love, if they have a new movie come out, I get excited for that personally. But that aside, a whole bunch of critics loving, X, Y, Z, whatever, does really nothing for me. I do avoid other reviews. I do avoid, the long tweets and letterbox, entries about these movies. I can't avoid like a quick tweet. I can't avoid like somebody just saying it in my ear, this movie's great, whatever. But I do avoid any kind of long form talk on these things. So I may know a movie is, being praised to high heaven, but I don't know specifics about it. So I find that helps. Also, I would add that Past Lives is currently my number one of this year. Adore it. Absolute best movie of the year, in my eyes. So I would, highly recommend that you get at it.
No, I know. It's going back into theaters at the end of the year too, I believe, which is there are certain films that if I don't see them in a theater, even though I might get a screening link or a screener from a studio, I'm just like, I kind of want to wait until I get to see it in theaters back on the
Yep.
like the pre-award circuit, because some those kind of move, the more intimate the movie, the less that I think that there's going to be happening, the more I'm like, I just want to like live inside of it on the big screen. I'll see, to use Donato's example, like I'm more likely to want to watch a Project Wolf Hunting at home because I'm like, I know what that experience is going to be, and it might not be the same, but it's going to be like a version of that experience. I might have like a slow burn horror, or a really gentle dramedy or coming of age type film, something like that. That's going to hit night and day different on my television at home as it will in the movie theater. So those are the things that I'm like, if I don't see it, I'm like, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to be distracted. My dog's going to be barking. I'm going to be like, yeah, it was okay. And that's going to be, like you said, Rob, no fault of the movie. So I need that pristine, distraction-free, maximum viewing experience.
I would love that to be every experience I have is on the theater screen. No distractions, no audience, because movie theater audiences are the worst.
Correct.
And just enjoy the movie. I would love that. That aside, knowing I can't control the audience, I love watching screeners at home because I cast them to the TV. I got a big TV, dim the lights, close the curtains. The only drawback there is occasionally certain companies will put like my name huge on the screen. Great for them, but it's definitely a distraction. But yeah, I understand that. There are definitely going to be movies that if I can absolutely do it, I'm going to wait and try and catch it in the theater, or make the effort to catch it in the theater. But if I can't, I'm pretty good about kind of zoning in. I got the phone off to the side.
Yeah.
Whatever's I got it off, and I don't know. It's definitely can be tough though. Like those slow burns you mentioned, stuff like that. The ones that are the more character based pieces. If there's not a lot happening dialogue wise, we'll get to that with the boat. But I thought about that when I rewatched it. It's the kind of movie that if you would turn away to do something, whatever, and you're not going to think anything's happening because you don't really hear much happening, but you're missing a ton. So you've got to definitely stay focused on those kind of things, and it can be tough. But I don't know. Also, some movies, I mean, let's be honest, 30 minutes in, you don't got to pay that much attention to it.
Yeah. Donato, I'm curious. Same question to you about managing expectations going into award season. Is that something you find you need to think about, or do you feel like you're like Rob and can kind of go in with pretty much heavy on the neutral?
I think so. The way I kind of go about it is I know which movies towards award season I want to prioritize, and like I think I've gotten better at knowing what I like. I've gotten better at knowing the ones that I think are going to be in my top 10 and kind of gauging like, all right, Past Lives, for example. Once again, the minute it was described, I'm like, that is a movie I need to see. It is right up my alley. It is something that's going to be affecting for me personally. So like, let's jump on that the minute it comes, and I did. And so I guess it's less about concerning hype. It's less about like, oh, everyone loves this, I need to see it because of that. It's more like, no, everyone has sold this correctly for me, so I'm going to make sure it goes to the top of the list. Like The Holdovers, again, it is beloved by a lot of people. It's beloved by a lot of critical groups. So you would assume like, oh, it's got a bunch of hype, like that's why you watch it. But like, no, it's just, again, personally a story for me that I put to the top. So I do my best. What Rob said about like avoiding long form reviews and things of that nature, that is absolutely my rule. It's a rule I do of just, if I'm ever going to write about something, you don't read someone else's opinion until you actually form your own. So I do carry that into award season as well. It's just kind of keeps me fresh on that. But yeah, it's just my own management of my own personal likes and dislikes. I can kind of look at the stack of movies and go, cool, American Fiction, let's put that to the top. And it doesn't always work too, because like Dix the Musical, I prioritize pretty fucking quick, and holy shit, do I hate Dix the Musical. Like it's not always going to work. So that's how I know I'm still honest about it, because I go to the top of my list and I go, these are the stuff I really want to see. And that doesn't mean I'm going to like it. I'm going to get a Dix. I'm going to get a Wonka. And I think it's dog shit. Like that's just life. It's
true. Wonka is dog shit.
Everyone's fucking wrong. That is one that I'll fight everyone on. I don't get that.
You guys, Chalamet is a notorious listener to Certified Forgotten. You're really killing our celebrity audience here.
Well, he should know that he made a mistake by starring in that film, because he's terrible at it.
Well, at least we know it's not a musical, because if it was, they would have advertised it as such. Last question, and then I want to talk about the boat, Rob. talking about prioritizing, shedding a light on new films and things of that nature. What are some titles off the various versions of genre list? Because this is a horror podcast and we're going to have horror fans listening, obviously. What are some titles that maybe aren't the top of your list, but the things you want people to seek out? The things that you're like, maybe this is in the special mentions of another list. Maybe this is 21 on a list of 20 horror films somewhere else. What do you want to not fall through the cracks this year? What do you want to not be talking about as a podcast guest again in 4 years on Certified Forgotten?
That's good because I want to highlight some of the ones towards the top but I want to, good question. Well, so I haven't actually formulated I'm doing a top 15 for both action and then I'm doing a top 15 for horror this year, on top of my general top 15 of every film. And on the horror front, these are ones I'm assuming will make the cut, but who knows really. I did like Jen Wexler's The Sacrifice Game quite a bit. After really hating her first film, The Ranger. So that one is a pleasant surprise. Obviously some of the bigger films, but I'm a huge fan of A Haunting in Venice, Kenneth Branagh's third I can't pronounce it.
Poirot.
There you go. His Agatha Christie movie. It's a low-key chiller. It's great. It's got a lot of emotionally affecting beats in there, and he's continues to just kind of like just kill it with that character. He's so good. It's kind of tangential horror, but I think it counts.
I put it on my list on the playlist, so it totally counts, I think.
Yeah, nice. Okay, good. Let's see some other festival stuff. What's another one? One that no one else is liking that I'm a huge fan of is the new Netflix one, Leave the World Behind. Everybody's dogging that movie, but I think it's fantastic, and it's kind of more of like an existential horror type situation. So some people aren't even considering it horror, but I think it's just really smart. It's a very attractive film, and it has the smarts to end without really, confirming certain things, which I'm always a fan of.
I haven't seen the movie. All I know about that is that was the book that tore my wife's book club apart. Like they read that, and some people just didn't finish it, and a few people were mad at other people for not finishing, and a bunch of people were like, I really didn't like it. And it was at that point that like a couple of people in the book group were like, all right, I don't think we need to keep this going anymore. So that's where that sits in my pantheon, is like that was the book that ruined the book club. So I can't wait to watch the movie.
Wow. Okay. Well, that makes me excited to read the book, actually. Another one I loved, actually, that it will be on the top 5 of my list is John Hyam's Sick, the slasher.
Yeah.
It kind of hit, I think it hit like Peacock or something like that in January after having like a brief festival run in at the end of 2022. I'm a huge fan of that. That to me is like the best slasher of the year. I know there are bigger contenders with Thanksgiving and Scream 6, both of which I like quite a bit, but Sick to me is just top of the game there. So I think people should give that one a shot as well. Brooklyn 45, Ted Gagan's new movie. Again, low key. It's horror though. I mean, it's like a period piece, World War II, but it's got some good chilling moments in there. Great performances, some really fun beats. So that one's a big one for me. I don't know. The rest of a lot of them are studio ones, but some of the festival ones that I know Donato's I want to talk about. Hang on, there's a kid screaming in the background. There she goes. Let's see. New Life. Did you see that one, Donato, at Fantasia?
Well, yeah, but it's not out this year.
Right, but it's pretty great. It's on my list.
It's okay. You can hype up stuff because people, this is podcasts are discovered at different times. Somebody might listen to this for the first time next year and be like, oh, perfect. This movie comes out this weekend.
Exactly. And also, I assume that you have international listeners. And guess what? It's out in some other countries, Donato.
Fair. That's actually a fair point. You know what? Actually, I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah. The Conference is a slasher.
Yeah.
That one. No one really talked about that one, but it's like a fun little slasher. Was it Norwegian or Swedish, something like that? I don't remember.
Swedish. Yep, yeah, Swedish.
It's really solid. You don't expect it from that title, or again, no one's talking about it, but it's on Netflix. I highly recommend it. I really like The Boogeyman, which nobody seemed to really kind of latch onto, but it's I think it really captured a lot of the horror beats and handled the grief element that too many studio movies are trying to get these days with the horror movies, and they don't quite work. But I think that one, I don't know, it did it in a way that wasn't like overbearing. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton. I will say my number one, real quick, is When Evil Lurks. It's a small little movie, but it's absolutely the best horror movie of the year. I think it's on Shudder. And it's again small ones, foreign language. A lot of people aren't going to watch it, but they absolutely should.
I didn't like it. Broke my
Well,
heart.
no accounting for taste.
No, that's why Donato and I serve as the spare mat. If one of us have a particularly bad opinion on a movie, you've got a backup to fill the spot.
That's probably smart.
Well, I was going to say it's my favorite of the year, so I am.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is the contrast of Donato Monagle movies of this year, where it's my number one and Monagle's no thank you. So,
But it's also, if you were to guess as to which one of us would have liked it, it's 100% a Monagle movie. So, variety is the spice of life.
That's true. That's true. I'll have to ask you later as to what your problem with it is, because I'd be curious how you're so wrong. But we can save that for later.
It's fine. My number one of the year is Pope's Exorcist. So, at least we agree about something.
I thought
I'm kidding. I do love it. I love it, but it's not number one.
I love that movie. I put that one off. I made a mistake of putting it off. I mean, I like the people involved in it, but I'm like, well, this is going to be like, a big dumb pile of shit. And then I finally watched it and I had an absolute blast with it. The horror elements are great. Crow is fantastic. Just everything about it. And I'm absolutely down for the fact that they've already announced a sequel to it. So I'm stoked.
We're going to talk about the boat, but I will say, just as an ending piece there, everybody says they want 90s horror until they get 90s horror, and then they're like, ugh, I didn't like that. It's like, what the hell, man? Like, what are you waiting for? This is 90s horror. Like, this is what you want. Like, embrace it or stop pretending like Dark Castle needs to make a resurgence. Anyways,
absolutely.
Off my soapbox. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the movie that Rob brought us for his return episode, which is The Boat. And guess what? It is indeed a festival film. So we're going to talk about it in just a sec. We'll be right back. Hi, Matt Monagle here. If you love listening to the Certified Forgotten podcast as much as we love making it, then you might be interested in signing up for our free weekly newsletter. Each week, we provide a roundup of the articles, podcast episodes, and patron-exclusive content we published for our community. All you need to do is visit www.patreon.com/certifiedforgotten and click on the Join for Free button. No payment information is required, and you'll be added to our mailing list immediately. So if you'd like more insight into the best horror films you haven't seen, visit www.patreon.com/certifiedforgotten and join for free today. Well, welcome back. We are here to talk about the I don't know if I should say 2018, 2019 after the conversation we just had. A horror film that played in festivals in 2018 and got wide release or limited release in 2019. We'll do it that way. The film is The Boat. It is the directorial featured debut of Winston Azzopardi. It stars his son, Joe Azzopardi, nepotism baby. And it is about, normally I have like a little write-up for these kind of things. It's about a guy who gets trapped on a boat. There isn't really a description of it, I think, that would enhance or take away from that anymore. Guy gets trapped on a boat, single setting, lockbox thriller type thing. It's played at previous festivals that the three of us have gone to and enjoyed, stuff like Fantastic Fest, and it is a standout within the Malta film industry. I think is worth noting. It's filmed in and around Malta. The director, Winston Azzopardi, is the former head of the film commission in Malta. So if you have a special place in your heart for Malta or for Malta filmmaking, this is one of the standouts of that particular industry. That's my sales pitch. To go for the reasons why it was actually brought onto the podcast, I'm going to turn to Rob Hunter. Rob, what made you pick The Boat?
It's a movie I've loved since 2018 when the film was released. 2018, The Boat, a 2018 picture. If you are familiar with the site Film School Rejects, they every year do a list of the year's best horror films. And I believe that year The Boat was number one of 2018's best horror films. So that's saying something right there. But no one's seen it. is the problem. I can understand it. I see why it's not a flashy film. There's not jump scares. There's not a creature. It's just not like a hyper fast moving film. It feels like a boat ride, but in the best possible way. The danger, the thrills, the fun, the relaxed satisfaction at the very end of it. a movie that I want more people to see. I don't know if it's actually still on Amazon Prime, but it was for a little while. I bought a Blu-ray imported from Germany, and I just rewatched it today. Still love it. And I don't think, like I said, there's not very many reviews of it up on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is your metric for this podcast of yours.
There's 9 on Rotten Tomatoes. We try and stick to 10 or fewer.
Perfect. Then yeah, so it deserves more. It just deserves more eyeballs. It is like, to your point about it being like a single location thing. He's trapped in the boat, but he's also not. I mean, he's able to kind of get off it here and there, but without spoiling much on there, the boat kind of I don't know. We're able to get into things, right, on the movie?
Yeah, and I would say for this particular movie, if we can't get into things, we don't have a ton to talk about. So
okay.
we should probably get into it.
Right. Well, then very straightforward. I mean, it's the boat seems to be playing games with him, to a degree. There's something is amiss. He gets on the boat. He finds it after going through a little bit of fog. Gets on from his little tiny fishing boat. Discovers that his fishing boat is now gone. So now he's trapped in the boat. Radio doesn't work. There's nobody on the boat. He's can't quite figure out what's going on. Engine, he's got to fiddle with that to get it going. So he starts kind of sailing, thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to take it back to where I started. But he sails and he cannot see land anywhere around him. He just is like, what is happening here? And then he, ends up in the bathroom. He goes to use the bathroom at one point, and the door closes behind him and locks. And the entire sequence is a great nod to that Sam Neill part from Dead Calm, Philip Noyce movie, where he's trapped on the big boat as it's like, sinking and stuff like that. And because the intensity just ramps up. He's trapped in this room. He's got to get out. And so this movie does that, but it does it repeatedly throughout the length of the film, which I think is only like 90 minutes. So it's kind of like a relaxation, then a build up of suspense, some thrills, and then, release, and then a build up, release. And it does it throughout the film because he's trapped in this boat that is actively trying to kill him. It's just a fascinating film, and I love the interplay between them. I mean, the boat isn't given a personality necessarily, and there are little things to suggest, oh, is somebody else on the boat? Is someone just playing with him? Or is this, some kind of supernatural thing? I mean, the answer, I think, becomes clear, but it just constantly keeps you on your toes. It's also very smart. I don't know how long you want me to talk about this movie, but it's a very smart film, I think. Usually this kind of film, you find yourself yelling at the protagonist, more than once, saying, "Oh, why would you do that?" But this guy is on it. He's making the smart choices. When he does get trapped, and when the boat is, making a move against him, he is making some smart reactions and some ways to kind of get out of it. I don't know. It just is such a great film. There's very little dialogue. It's just one guy, one character the entire film. So you hear him like trying to get the radio working. You hear him calling out hello, but there's no one else for him to talk to. So it is mostly a dialogue-free film. Like a survival thriller. It's like that Robert Redford film, All Is Lost, but with a supernatural bent, as he just spends the entirety of the film trying to survive the situation he finds himself in. And you build up to the end, and it feels like there's like a begrudging respect between the boat and him. I don't know. I'm absolutely in love with this movie. The main performance, like you said, is the director's son. It's nothing flashy. It's a solid performance. It's a physical performance because he kind of run through the ringer here. I don't know. It just, like I said, it just keeps you on your toes, just like it keeps him on his toes, just like the boat keeps him kind of like constantly aware and afraid as far as what's happening next.
Donato, did you get a chance to see this when it played at Fantastic Fest?
I did not get to see it when it played the festival.
Got it.
Or actually, wait, no, I take it back. Because I know I went off of Rob's recommendation, and I believe Rob recommended it to me at the festival, and I think I got home from Fantastic Fest and had a few more days. So I actually do think I saw it as part of the festival, quote unquote, just not there.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, no, I absolutely took this as one of the times, I trusted my friend Rob Hunter, and he's like, nope, best of the year, best of everything. So I gave it a watch and very much echo everything that he said. I really like the conversation about, oh, well, like, is it horror? Is it scary and stuff like that? Because my mom, when I was watching it on a rewatch here, she's not watching it with me, but she'll come in and out as I'm watching a film. And it's exactly what she said. She's like, oh, is this a horror movie? Like, nothing scary has happened. And that's while he's trapped in the bathroom trying to get peek his head out the little window that he can't even fit his entire head out. And like my claustrophobia was kicking in huge. So to me, I'm like, oh, yeah, no, this is Right. Water's rising. He can't get out of the room. There's the tiniest sliver of a window that is basically his only exit, but it's not. So it makes it even worse. So yeah, like it's how we define horror. It's what it is. There's no monster. There's no creature. But I mean, claustrophobia is a fear, and like fear is terrifying. So it very much hits on the horror levels for me, especially trapped in that bathroom for what I think is like a third of the movie. It feels like he's in there a good amount, which is good because that's where a lot of action takes place. And I really respect the filmmaker for, once again, echoing Rob, it's a smart film, and I respect the filmmaker finding so many ways to put his character not only in peril, but let him escape that peril for a little bit too, because he's stuck on a sailboat. And it's like, how much can you really get into? But no, like, this is a fisherman who knows his way around a boat. He's fixing things. He's like able to adjust mechanical issues. He's able to play with the sails and get things going the right way. So the entirety of I think it's 82 minutes on the nose, the entirety of that time is not wasted. Like, you find so many ways to stay engaged and so many ways to be like, yeah, oh my God, he's going to get out this time. And there's just such a great moment where, if we're talking about the respect between character and boat, because they're both characters hilariously, when the character goes out, basically he makes a makeshift raft with some pontoons and a door, and he goes out to sea because he thinks everything is sinking. And he's just sitting there watching the boat, and is basically like, you son of a bitch, you're not going to sink, are you? And like, he has to go back on the boat. And it's such an interesting moment, because there is a respect there where, like, I got away from you, now you're finally dying, but damn it, I still need you. And it's good.
And it's mutual too, because at one point he ends up in the water when the boat, because he gets on the dinghy thinking he can get to, because the sailboat's not moving. He gets on his little makeshift raft to try and make his way to a ship he sees in the distance. And as he's rowing it, like, he looks behind him, and the sailboat has started going like at full speed, is now charging him from behind. And so he gets knocked into the water. And so he spends a little bit of time in the water, which has its own whole set of fears as things are bumping you underneath the surface and stuff like that. And it's at night. And then after he gets through all that, the boat, slowly comes back into view and next to him again, so he can get back on again, because the boat wants to keep playing. The boat wants to keep this going. It's enjoying this back and forth. You're kind of wondering, like, okay, has the boat done this before? Whatever is in charge of this is this is the latest victim or whatever. You don't really know. The boat's name was it Aeolus, I think, which is the god of wind.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of wonder, is there kind of a playfulness there as well? Playing with human toys kind of thing. It's just a lot to let you kind of wonder and think about as this guy is fighting for his life, on and off this boat. And it just is like I said, for me, it's just constantly engaging, and constantly there's kind of a wit about it. And again, there's no like wisecracks, and there's no, the boat doesn't talk or anything like that, but just the back and forth. At one point we trap in the bathroom, and then suddenly the door is unlocked, or a door. I mean, it just is constantly playing with him, and his reactions to it, and his what he tries to take advantage of and what he falls prey to. It's just constantly, I don't know, it's just constantly engaging. And to me, it's just really well done. It's also a very attractive film, I think, too.
Yeah.
Okay, but if the boat had a voice, who would voice the boat, though?
Well, I think that would ruin the film, but
Arnold Schwarzenegger, just go for broke. Watch out for the wind.
No, I hear him as like a Keith David. I don't know why. I got Keith David's voice in my head. I feel like he'd be the boat.
That's fair.
Well, there's a few interesting things. I mentioned before that Winston Azzopardi is a figure within the Malta film scene, and I think it's actually kind of important in the understanding of how this movie got made, which is he is primarily a producer. He's worked on a lot of really big films that have shot, at least in part, in Malta. He's worked on stuff like Troy. He worked on Ridley Scott's Napoleon earlier this year. He's a producer on a lot of these films and miniseries. But also, really importantly, both Winston and his son Joe grew up on the water. They both used to sail competitively in and around Malta, and in interviews at Fantastic Fest and other festivals, they've talked about how they've gotten kind of away from it. But Rob, I think it goes to the point that you made, which is like the intelligence of this film comes through in the little things. Like, this is not going to be an exploitative or kind of like grindhouse style movie. The moment he ties off the boat, his dinghy to the big boat at the beginning, and he just like casually fires off. I'm not a knot guy. I don't know what it is, but like he just casually fires off what you recognize even as a layperson as like a complicated and good and like sturdy knot. And he's not looking at his hands while he's doing it. He's kind of like looking up and scanning. You're just like, oh, there are things that maybe this director and this performer know how to do and are capable of doing on screen that other people couldn't. And that bears out over the course of the film, whether it's, adjusting the rigging on the boat, whether it is kind of the way that they explore the different areas or the way that they use maps and stuff. There's just sort of an element of, I believe that this character knows how to do this, that other films work so hard to achieve and never come close to.
Yeah, and often drop the ball on. Like they'll other films will hit one or two things where the character is like, even again, to me, a layperson is like, what are you doing? This character, you never question him. You see a situation, and even if you're thinking, okay, what's he going to do, whatever, sometimes he does the obvious thing. Sometimes he kind of like, thinks outside the box. But he's not a character you're, at any point going to yell at and call a fucking idiot, which is a very common occurrence in, in horror or in, survival films. So yeah, they know what they're doing. And I think it translates beautifully to the character and to the film and to the experience, because you are watching somebody who is, a competent, knowledgeable person going up against something they don't understand, but what they do understand are the physical, aspects of what they're dealing with. Mm-hmm. They can't explain why it's happening, but they know how, a boat engine works or a lock works or whatever, or the rigging on the boat. So I mean, it's I don't know, it's something that takes full advantage of the locale, of their boat knowledge, and it gets across so much, again, without dialogue. You don't have to have the characters explaining things, what they're doing. At one point, he's reaching through the window to cut the rigging for the sail to stop it in the middle of a storm. It's made very clear what he's doing and why he's doing it. You're never wondering like, oh, what's going on here. It's very clear, and it's great that this character knows to do this. And so it's, mm-hmm. I don't know, like I already said the word, but I mean, it's just constantly engaging, and you're kind of in there with him in this very visceral experience he's going through.
Well, I also think that's a testament to Joe Azzopardi as an actor, because the film itself does not work without a strong central performance. I know all of us have seen plenty of horror movies and plenty of survival thrillers, and sometimes you'll get a survival thriller, especially a single location one, that doesn't have the strongest lead actor. And it's just a huge issue, because that's the person we're stuck with. That's the person that we're relying on this entire time. And when your lead actor can't really convey, whether that's the danger or whether that's anything that you have to convey, like your range has to be huge here. You've got 80 minutes in a lockbox, and you have to keep us thrilled, entertained, all of those things. And I think Joe Azzopardi does that to a pretty tremendous effect, given the fact that he really doesn't have any lines. And I think especially of that scene Rob is talking about, where he's trapped in a bathroom that's already tight quarters, because you're talking about a single sailboat bathroom, and his arm is reaching out the window. There is like, whatever you want to call it, there's a piece of boat that is hitting his hand and basically crushing it as he's trying to cut the rope. And while that's happening, he is dehydrated and maybe like drank salt water, and he's now vomiting. So like all of this is happening at the same time as he is in his highest moment of panic. And it like, he's selling the fuck out of it. Like, I don't want to say anything else about it. Like, he's just selling the absolute hell out of that scene. And you feel the physicality. You feel that he's beaten down and broken, but at the same time is not giving up. And that's such a huge element to this film, is that once again, you believe that he's not ready to like throw in the towel. You believe that he wants to get off this boat and actually survive. There's no like fabricated sense of heroism or that like second wind or anything. What Azzopardi is able to deliver as this lead performance is a fisherman stuck on a fucking supernatural boat is leagues above what I was expecting the first time I saw it.
And I think that becomes kind of like the performance itself, I think, plays into the overall strength of the movie, which again, when you go through interviews, father and son are pretty candid about the fact that they fought a lot during the production over the script, over backstory. Joe Azzopardi talks a lot about the fact that he wanted flashbacks or like some kind of like personal relationship type piece in order to give the performance weight. But I think what that does is, rather than giving him big moments that kind of carry the emotions of the scene, I think this is a movie about reacting, not acting, right? Like everything that Azzopardi is doing on screen is basically be like, shit, okay, I'm going to do this. Oh shit, okay, I'm going to do this. And I think that makes it as easy as it's ever been to carry a one person movie by only ever having to kind of respond to the thing that's happening to your character at that moment. Which is great. Like it worked. Like I can't imagine. And they both in interviews talk about it. And Joe Azzopardi's like, I was absolutely wrong. But I can't imagine what would happen if you had a few cutaways or flashbacks and like what his girlfriend back home, will he ever get back to her? It would have destroyed the whole flow of the thing because it's that like functional watching somebody like build the IKEA furniture-ness of it all, where you're just like, oh, this is going really well. I mean, it's going really terribly, but like I believe that you know what you're doing, and I will watch you do that for an hour and a half.
I think the visuals pair with that as well, because I mean, to the same degree, when you watch a lot of movies that are like the single location, whatever, there is always a risk that that location is going to grow stale, just like the lead performance could, but the location could grow stale. And here, there's a risk that, we could feel too confined or too kind of shut off from the world. But you do always feel like you're out on the ocean. I think the shots are great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the boat, they move around the boat beautifully. Exteriors, down in the cabin, but also the wide shots where you're just looking and there is just no land. It just is like nothing. And it feels like you're out there. It doesn't feel like you're in a tank somewhere, aside from the dolphin scene. But I mean, so you're definitely feeling as if you are out there. You're looking everywhere and you are in the middle of nowhere. And this is a situation. So it never feels like like too confined or too, while still being claustrophobic. Or too stale or too kind of like, dull. There's always something visually going on, whether it be, again, just nature or the threat of like, a door. You see an open door, that door can be closing. There's enough going on that, the movie kind of teaches you that everything is in play. And I think one of the things I love, there's a scene where he early on, before anything really goes wrong, he's trying to take a pee break off the side of the boat. And the boom comes over and tries to knock him in the water. He recovers, gets up, whatever, and he doesn't think anything of it. He thinks it just came loose. So that's what brings him to the bathroom. So it's almost like the boat is again kind of maneuvering him and shaping him and directing him, because he gets to the bathroom to go to the bathroom instead of off the side, and boom, now he's locked in there. So the boat is just constantly kind of doing this kind of stuff, and yeah, it's his reaction to these just constant threat of what this thing is doing to him. Again, like set against visuals that you completely buy. You never feel like you're on a soundstage. You never feel like you're in a box somewhere. It just feels like, bam, we are out in the middle of nowhere with this guy on the ocean, and this is a nightmare. And he just is trucking through it. Like, he's pissed, he's angry, he gets scared, but he's trucking through it because, like Matt said, he's there to survive, and he's got skill sets, but will they carry him through? That's the question.
And there's also the tiny little hint that, hey, maybe someone is on this boat. I mean, we pretty much know there's not, and that's just, once again, the boat messing with him, and I love that. It's like really driving into his psyche, because of course, like, a boat couldn't lock its bathroom door on its own. Like, that's not possible. But so that adds a layer too, where the mania of what's happening and like the surrealness of what is going on, of like, maybe there is someone there. Maybe there is someone doing a great job hiding around every
turn. You hear the
turn.
Footsteps above you. It's so good.
Right. Yeah. And so that, again, that's the boat playing with them. You hear footsteps, you hear these little things. And I think like that's, once again, another little additive, a clever little twist that keeps your mind racing and trying to find ways to explain what's going on. So just another little twist and turn that the movie does, that you might know pretty clearly that no one else is there, but the boat makes you believe.
It gives it offers a possibility. And I guess, like I said, it's never, I think there's a definitive thing at the end as far as whether it's supernatural or whether someone's playing with them, whatever. But it still doesn't say here's exactly what's happening. Right. Here's a little diary in the boat, in the cabin of the boat, explaining whatever curse or whatever. It doesn't get any of that. It just says here's the situation. Something's fucking with you. Try and survive. And again, I don't want to reiterate it, but I'm gonna. That my favorite thing is the way that you kind of get the sense that this boat grows to respect him over the course of the film. The fact that it wants to keep playing with him, but two, once you get to that ending, it feels like it's just is like, hey, you're a worthy opponent, a worthy competitor, have a good rest of your day kind of thing. It just is so, I just love it because it's a wonder, but it's also, again, and it's just to their history of sailing and being out in the water, it leaves you with that, final note of like, it is a fucking mystery out there. There's so much outside of our control. Once you get out on the water, you think you know what you're doing, and this guy knows a lot. He's able to, try and survive whatever. But there's a lot more going on than we're ever going to understand. And the movie kind of acknowledges that, and the lead character, I think he kind of, accepts it as well by the end. It just is a beautiful film, I think, all around.
Yeah, and I'm definitely pro bored Greek gods as the read. It ties to the maltiness of it all. I think it makes this weirdly sort of like a stealth pantheon movie in a way that I really enjoy. It is time, as always, for the last question on Certified Forgotten, and we've already addressed this a little bit, Rob. When you introed the film, you talked about how hard it's not hard to find. You can rent it for $3.99 on Amazon. I did, but how gone it is from a lot of cultural conversations about horror films and about the kind of stuff that's been coming out the last few years. So as always, we'll start with you, Rob, and then go to you, Donato. How does this movie become unforgotten? Where and how do you see this kind of re-entering as a festival movie, or as a darling, or as something that a lot of horror fans, genre fans, sailing fans are going to gravitate around and be like, you definitely have to see this film?
Well, one, I think that what it would need here is a US video label like TerraVision, Brad Henderson, to pick it up and give it a US disc release. I think that would be number one. It needs to get like an actual physical release over here, which will get more people talking about it just off the top, because it's not going to play festivals again. It's not going to hit, be a big splash on other streaming service. It's the kind of thing that, like sometimes something will appear on Netflix, an older film, and suddenly it becomes like, the viral thing and everyone's watching it and talking about it. I don't see this being that. I would love it, but I mean, it's so really the only hope for it would be, more people talking about it, and getting a video release. I think it's important though, because I think unlike any other genre of film, horror is so good about having so many nooks and crannies, of types of movies. And like Donato was saying earlier, some people might question if this is horror. It absolutely is horror. It's survival horror. It's a guy fighting for his life against an unknown force.
It fits right alongside like an open water. It's that kind of movie. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I love like, hardcore stuff like the sadness. I love, emotional, deep, painful horror, animal attack stuff. There's so much of variety and, horror comedies, and this thing fits in there as just kind of, again, survival horror, but one person against, a boat. I mean, it seems silly, but it's not something like Christine. It's not, that 70s movie about the possessed bulldozer. It's not that. It's a serious survival tale that just happens to have, as an antagonist, a boat, a nice sailboat. But I think so. Anyway, I think it needs a physical release. I think that'll get people talking about it again. And until then, I'm just going to keep reminding people on Twitter that it's the best horror film of 2018.
Donato.
Yeah, it's hard to say how do you put this back in the conversation when it was never part of the conversation, and like that sucks to say, but it is one of those festival darlings that found its small audience at a festival. Like it didn't even win that much besides in like the Malta Film Festival Award. Like apparently it did very well domestically for them. But yeah, it plays fantastic. It plays Fantasia. It hits a few people the right way, and then it just kind of dies to death. And that is unfortunate because this happens to so many films that we see at festivals, and that is why we do this podcast, and that is why we do what we do. But it needs that physical release stateside, and it needs a push after that too. It needs someone like with huge clout to find it and just start really throwing it around, because as much as we can do for our listeners and as much as we can do for our smaller audience, like it's still, that reach has dwindled so much with fucking Muskrat killing Twitter and shit like that. So it does need that huge kind of push behind a physical release, because, it's that claustrophobia. It's all that like really good paranoia fear stuff. Like what's the fear of open water or something like that? Thalassophobia, about like what is under large bodies of water. It does such a good job playing with all that shit. And I would love to like pair it with other survival horror films that are maybe more like batty and wacky, like fucking put it with 4x4 about the guy who's trying to steal a car and then gets trapped inside. Like that's the way you do it. You find a movie like that and put them together and kind of let them go. And yeah, I mean, like there's even some really fun, like we didn't even get to talk about it, but I actually researched things and I actually found like a fun explanation for the ending, because I do want to go back to it really quickly. Like, because Rob said it was kind of like a nice ending. And like, is that how you read that?
Well, I don't think I used the word nice, and if I did, I apologize. I think it's a positive ending because it ends with spoilers incoming, but it ends with our protagonist essentially earning his freedom and being given his freedom back, because the boat takes him back to shore and lets him off.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing. Number one. And the second part of that is when he walks back to his home, his little place on the water, his little fishing boat is back there again. So whatever was in charge of all this returned his boat to him as well. And again, in my head, what I'm hearing is, again, whatever is causing this, basically saying, you were absolutely a worthy competitor. You kept me entertained. Thank you. Now go about your life. And that to me is an absolute positive thing, because it doesn't leave this guy terrified of the water. It leaves him terrified of what that situation was. It doesn't leave him maimed. It doesn't leave him, mentally scarred about, fishing. I think he's left kind of wondering what the heck was that, but I think even he would understand and accept and see that, again, that respect that kind of went both ways. So yes, I think to me it's a positive ending, because there's the boat sitting out there ready for the next person to come through. It's how do you see it as negative?
So I read his final reaction as I think he is in disbelief over what he just did, but like my initial reading on that was fear. My initial reading on that was like, he's uncomfortable with where he is and he's a little distraught. And so I did some digging. And do you mind if I read a quick little thing that was I don't even know if this is like true, but this actually aligns more with what I was thinking. But basically, so Aeolus, like the real Greek name or whatever, the god is Aiolos. So Aiolos was the divine keeper of the winds, as Rob said before, and the king of a mythical floating island named Aeolia, pronunciation, stuff like that. He kept the violent storm winds locked safely away inside a cavernous interior on his island, and released them only at the command of the greatest god to wreak devastation upon the world. So Odysseus once visited his island, and he was entrusted with the bag containing all the storm winds to ensure a safe voyage home. However, during the trip, the hero's greedy companions opened the bag in search for gold, and the escaping winds carried their ship all the way back to Aiolos' shore. So basically what you get from that, and what that kind of gets to, is the character was carried by Aiolos to live trapped on that island forever. And that's why you see the other boaters who were there, who are on the island, because in the beginning there is no one else there. It's just him. It's him and his boat. But when he goes back there, there's more people, there's more boats, and that's everyone who the boat has brought back to its island to leave there, and they're all trapped there for eternity now.
That's a great interpretation, but I reject it. I think I think the beginning of what you read there is accurate enough. I think you can stop right there, which is that the god controls the winds and only lets them out for whatever reason you said. So that fits as to what is happening here. This playful god just wants to kind of interact with with these nothing things, which are people. And I think that he's probably drowned more than a few of them over the years. And I think that this is one of the rare people, if not the first, to actually again show resistance, put up a fight, outthink it, outwit it, keep it going, and then survive. And so I think that the place looks too similar, I think, to where he came from, especially that opening, because that opening in the rocks is the exact same one he went out in the beginning of the movie. So I don't know why that would be also on this mystical island. So I reject your thesis, and I say instead that he is maybe not thrilled, but he is happy to be alive, fearful and aware that we just don't know what the fuck is out there. And I think that's kind of like his, like as comfortable as he's been on the ocean, now he's like thinking, Jesus, we really don't know. And that is the kind of like the wonder of what the gods are capable of.
Monagle, you're the deciding vote.
I think he's dead. I think the boat's the river Styx and he got carried over. I don't know. I as with everything, I like the fact that it ends in a place where both of you have very valid reads that I 100% believe that you believe them, which is not a backhanded compliment. It's just movies that end in a place where people can walk away being convinced of alternate endings without the movie feeling the need to tip its hand one way or the other are always going to be my favorite kind of films. And the fact that it does all of this with like some real Greek god shit is fun because Greek gods kick ass, and we should have more movies that lean into that these days that aren't, you know, Jamie Lannister, Alex Proyas films. No disrespect, Gods of Egypt, but let's keep that vibe going. Here's my thing. Go watch The Boat, go tell people to watch The Boat, and then write your own screenplay for a Greek god horror movie, because I will watch that shit every day of the week.
I will also watch that.
Rob and I and Donato, I assume, will watch the movie for you. But for now, we're going to leave you with The Boat, which is available to rent, not stream, but is available to rent in a couple of different places. Go watch it. Go tell you what you think. Talk to Rob and Matt on social media and let them know which reading you side with in the very end. Speaking of social media and Muskrat, Rob, thank you for coming on the show. Where do people go if they want to connect with you to see, you know, you talk about the things that you're watching, places like Letterboxd, social media, where's your writer portfolio, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Letterboxd.
That's it? Just Letterboxd?
Yeah. I'm on Twitter as Fake Rob Hunter. I'm on Letterboxd as Fake Rob Hunter. And I'm writing stuff over at Film School Rejects. I usually keep like a running thing on Twitter saying what I'm watching now. Today I just posted a picture of the Blu-ray of The Boat and tagged it with now rewatching. And somebody very politely and kindly DM'd me to say, for what it's worth, you want to hold the DVD further away from the camera, perhaps tilt it a little bit, and then you take the picture, and then you can pinch zoom in to avoid reflections and such. So I thought that was nice of someone to comment. But yeah, those are the three main places social media wise. I don't really discuss movies anyplace else on social media, although I'm only ever on Instagram. It's not Twitter and Letterboxd. So, but yeah, Fake Rob Hunter, Twitter and Letterboxd, and then Film School Rejects.
Awesome. Donato, for people that side with you on the great boat god debate of 2023, how do they connect with you? Where do they see what you're working on?
Yes, you can find me much warmer and not trying to shiver through my words on this podcast. I think I got frostbite on because I am so fucking cold. But yes, find me at Donatobomb, DONATOBOMB, on Twitter, Letterboxd, Instagram, sometimes on Blue Sky, rarely on TikTok, but still playing around with it. And yeah, I can hit you up with my best of year list, stuff like that. A lot in the pipeline. So I don't know. My brain is frozen. Just get me out of here.
Support our Patreon. Most of our money goes towards our writers. Apparently, some of our money goes to replace Donato's fingers that just fell off via frostbite. You can find me on social media. I have a good SEO name, Google Monocle. You'll find it. As for the site, certifiedforgotten.com, we have a Substack. Every Friday we come out with a quick rundown of the articles that published last week and why we're so happy to have them on the site. We have podcasts in all the places you find podcasts, and Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, Facebook. We're just going to keep throwing things at the wall until something sticks. It's been a year now and nothing has stuck, but we have our homes and we're happy with it. Rob, it's been good to see you. Honestly, podcasting aside, I haven't talked to you in a long time, man. It was really good to see you. It was really good to catch up. And I hope that I will see you before you return as a guest again. I don't want your podcast guesting to be the only time I talk about what's going on in your life.
That would be nice. I am sadly currently avoiding Texas because they can go fuck themselves. Correct. So I haven't made it down to Fantastic Fest in a couple of years, also the pandemic. But yeah, maybe at some point we will cross paths again. I'm sure we will.
You still in California? That's the only way Donato can get me to come out.
No, I'm up in Washington right now, but I am planning a trip down to California sometime soon. I got to convince Donato to set up a poker game that I can come crash.
There we go. I'll do it for that.
You need to come, and then it'll happen. That's it.
Okay.
All right. So look forward to Great Poker Game 2024 with this podcast. Donato, it is the time for you to take us out. There's 5 fucking lines of dialogue in the movie. I don't know what you're going to use. Give it a shot.
I fucked a mermaid.
That's okay.
you.